Okay, let's dive in. Today we're tackling, well, a bit of a behemoth, understanding IBM. Not the old IBM, but the IBM that's right in the thick of this huge transformation.
That's right. Yeah, we've gathered quite a bit of material for this deep dive, articles, research, IBM's own stuff, to really try and unpack what they're actually focused on now.
And where they're putting their big bets.
Yeah.
It's partly familiar stuff like hybrid cloud and AI, but also something really out there, pushing the limits.
Yeah.
Quantum computing.
Exactly. And our goal here is, cut through all the noise, pull out the main insights. What's IBM really doing? Why should you care? What are the strengths, weaknesses, and maybe most importantly, what should you keep an eye on as things develop?
Think of this as your shortcut, basically, to getting a clear picture of IBM today.
Right. A way to get up to speed quickly.
And just to, grab your attention up front, let's talk about something that sounds almost like science fiction, but is actually key to their long game. These future quantum computers, Starling and Blue Jay.
This is, you could argue, the most ambitious piece of IBM's whole strategy. They've put out this really detailed long-term roadmap, decades long, aimed squarely at building fault-tolerant quantum systems.
Okay, fault-tolerant. Let's unpack that a bit.
Yeah.
Because we hear about quantum computers now, but that term isn't always used.
Right. Good point. Most quantum computers today are, well, they're incredibly sensitive, prone to errors, useful for experiments, sure, but not for really complex, long calculations without things getting messed up. Fault tolerance means using quantum error correction. It's like these clever techniques using lots of physical qubits to create one stable, reliable, logical qubit.
Oh, okay, so the logical qubit is the goal, the solid one built using the more fragile physical ones.
Exactly. And IBM thinks they found a better way to do this using something called quantum low-density parity check codes, or qLDPC codes. They reckon this could seriously cut down the number of physical qubits needed for each logical one, maybe by 90% compared to other ways like surface codes.
90%? Wow! If that works out, that's huge for scaling these things up. Is that related to their bicycle architecture I've read about?
Yes, exactly. The qLDPC approach is core to that bicycle architecture. It's all designed for efficiency, for making fault tolerance practical to scale up. It's a big engineering bet.
And they've put some pretty bold targets out there for these machines. Starling by 2029, you said.
Yep, Starling is the 2029 target. They're aiming for 200 logical qubits. And get this, 100 million quantum operations. Now, that might still sound kind of abstract.
It does, a little.
But the real insight isn't just the numbers. It's the scale of the jump they think this architecture allows.
How big a jump are we talking? Could you put Starling in perspective against what they have now?
Well, okay, compare it to their current top chip, the Heron processor. That does maybe 5,000 operations. Starling is aiming for 20,000 times more operations.
20,000 times.
And just trying to represent the state of a system like Starling, you'd need memory way beyond, like a quindecillion. A quindecillion, that's 10 to the power of 48 of today's biggest supercomputers.
Okay, a quindecillion. That number alone just screams complexity, doesn't it? And Blue Jay is even further out.
Blue Jay is the next big target after that, yeah. Aiming for 2033. Over 2,000 logical qubits and 1 billion quantum operations. These are the kinds of machines meant to tackle problems that are just impossible for any classical computer today.
And these aren't just drawings on a whiteboard. They're actually building the facilities.
They are. They just opened a new IBM quantum data center up in Poughkeepsie, New York. That's where Starling is planned to live. And it already has the largest concentration of what they call utility-scale quantum computers anywhere.
Utility scale, meaning like usable, not just lab toys.
Yeah.
What about their basic tech approach? How does it stack up against others in the quantum race?
IBM is going down the gate-based path. They're aiming for universal quantum computation, so building a general-purpose quantum computer. That's different from, say, D-Wave.
Right, D-Wave uses quantum annealing, doesn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. Which is more specialized, mainly for optimization problems.
So the thinking is, D-Wave might be useful for certain tasks right now, but IBM's playing the long game for a machine that can do, well, anything quantumly possible.
That's one way to look at it. And yeah, some argue that current annealers might outperform IBM's current gate-based systems on specific optimization tasks today. But IBM's roadmap, it's laser-focused on that future, where fault-tolerant universal systems become a reality. Their Heron processor, the one in System 2 now, is really a stepping stone.
And the software side is crucial too, right? Qiskit?
Oh, absolutely critical. Qiskit is their open source platform. It's how developers actually get to use the hardware. It's all about building a community, lowering the barrier to entry, helping people figure out quantum algorithms. It's essential to turn the hardware progress into actual useful applications down the line.
We hear a lot about quantum supremacy. IBM uses a different phrase, don't they?
They do. They prefer quantum advantage, which means showing a practical benefit, solving a real problem faster, better, or cheaper than a classical computer. It's not just about proving some theoretical speed up on an abstract math problem.
Makes sense.
They actually pushed back pretty hard on Google's 2019 supremacy claim, arguing it wasn't quite the slam dunk presented. It really shows their focus is on utility, practical results.
So solving actual business problems, scientific problems, like what?
Well, CEO Arvind Krishna often talks about things like drug discovery, designing new materials, complex financial modeling, maybe simulating carbon capture processes. Basically problems where classical computers just get bogged down by too many possibilities.
Or we see any, glimmers of this advantage in the real world yet?
One interesting example is their work with Lockheed Martin. They used an IBM quantum processor to simulate properties of a molecule, methylene. And the results they got for its energy gap were apparently closer to real experimental values than what traditional classical methods could achieve. It's early days, but it's a concrete example in chemistry.
Okay, so Starling 2029, Blue Jay 2033. Those are the big headlines. But what about the steps in between? How do we track if they're actually getting there?
Yeah, that's where the intermediate milestones are really important. Loon next year, 2025, that's about testing the qLDPC error correction stuff. Then Kookaburra in 2026, the first modular processor, trying to combine MemL and logic. And Cockatoo in 2027 is supposed to show they can link two Kookaburra modules together.
Got it. So these are like checkpoints, proof points that the architecture actually works before they try to build the massive systems.
Yeah.
It sounds like this needs more than just hardware engineers. You need serious scientists, too.
Absolutely. Deep expertise. Krishna always highlights IBM's strong foundation in math, physics, and engineering as being essential for even attempting this fault-tolerant path.
Given how long this takes and how ambitious it is, quantum's obviously risky. Does being a big, diversified company like IBM make it a quote-unquote safer bet in quantum compared to, say, a pure startup?
That's definitely an argument you hear a lot. IBM has the resources, right? A long history of big R&D projects. And crucially, their entire business doesn't depend on quantum succeeding tomorrow. Their other revenue streams let them invest for the long haul, maybe decades, in a way a startup just can't. They can afford to see the roadmap through.
Although the flip side, like you mentioned with D-Wave, is that while IBM aims for the ultimate machine way down the road, others might deliver value sooner on narrower problems using different tech.
Exactly. It just shows you how varied the quantum landscape is right now. IBM's making a very specific long-term bet on a foundational capability. Now, while quantum's the really far-out exciting stuff where IBM's making waves today in the enterprise is definitely AI, and it's all centered around their watsonx platform.
Okay, watsonx. So this isn't just like another AI chatbot. It's their core strategy for businesses using AI.
Precisely. IBM's whole angle with watsonx is enterprise first. It's built to help companies use AI with their own data securely, reliably, for specific business goals. They're not really chasing artificial general intelligence just for the sake of it.
So what are the main ideas behind watsonx? What makes it tick?
They really hammer home 4 main points. First, openness and flexibility. You get a choice of models. They have their own called Granite, but you can use third-party ones, open source models like Llama 2, Mistral, and it's built to run pretty much anywhere across any cloud.
Okay, choice is good.
Second, trust and governance. This is huge for businesses, right? Especially if you're in banking or healthcare. They put a lot of emphasis on using trusted data, and they have tools like watsonx.governance to help manage compliance, ethics, explainability, all that stuff.
That control and transparency, that seems absolutely vital for companies to actually adopt this stuff.
Totally. Third is data centricity. AI needs data, so watsonx.data is their approach. It's an open, hybrid lakehouse architecture designed to give AI access to all sorts of enterprise data, structured or unstructured.
Right.
And fourth is enterprise-focused solutions. They're not just giving you a platform, they're building specific AI tools on it. Things like watsonx Code Assistant for developers, watsonx Orchestrate for automating tasks, and the watsonx.ai Studio for building your own custom models.
And they even have a physical place for this in New York City, the watsonx AI Labs.
Yeah, they position it as a co-creation hub. a place where IBM experts, clients, startups, developers can actually get together and collaborate on building AI solutions for specific industries. It's about tailoring AI, not just offering a generic tool.
And acquisitions play a role here, too. I remember reading about SeekAI.
Yeah, that was a really interesting pickup, especially for their vision around agentic AI. SeekAI's tech helps AI agents query enterprise data using just natural language.
So you can just ask your database a question in plain English.
Kind of, yeah. Imagine asking complex questions about your business data like you'd ask a coworker. That ability for AI to interact naturally with corporate data is key for building these autonomous AI agents. IBM talks about agents that can handle complex tasks on their own.
Agentic AI, so AI that can actually do stuff, not just answer questions.
Exactly. The vision is for watsonx Orchestrate to be like the central nervous system for these agents, coordinating them to carry out multi-step processes across different business systems. SeekAI helps those agents understand and pull the data they need.
IBM's predicted this huge explosion in new apps by 2028, many driven by AI. Watson's fits into that picture.
Absolutely. That forecast over 1 billion new apps underlines the need for AI solutions. And these apps need platforms like watsonx that can access data wherever it lives, run different models, and plug into complex, often messy enterprise IT setups.
Can you give us a solid example, a client actually using watsonx?
The Roche collaboration is a good one. They're using watsonx for an app called AccuCheck Smart Guide Predict. It helps diabetes patients by predicting glucose levels and giving warnings about potential lows. They're also using watsonx large language models to analyze clinical trial data faster, so real-world health impacts.
And performance matters too, right? They're pushing the envelope there.
Yes, they teamed up with CoreWeave and NVIDIA using those new Blackwell GPUs, the GB200s. They hit record ML perf results, training a massive model, Llama 3.1 405B, in less than half an hour. It shows they can handle the heavy lifting needed for these big foundation models.
What about AI just making stuff up? Hallucinations, that's a huge worry. How's IBM tackling that?
It's a major focus, especially for enterprise use. They're working on techniques, have patents pending. One idea is integrating external context real-world info and having multiple models check each other's work, basically, to make answers more accurate and grounded. Another patent is about protecting privacy when people prompt the AI, making sure sensitive info isn't mishandled. It all goes back to building trusted AI for business.
And Red Hat's role in all this AI strategy, it seems crucial.
Oh, totally critical. Red Hat OpenShift AI is the platform that lets companies build and run these AI apps consistently, anywhere, whether it's on their own servers or multiple clouds. RHEL AI provides access to IBM's Granite models, and they have this InstructLab service now to help companies build custom AI models using their own private data. Red Hat really is the foundation for deploying AI across the enterprise.
Just before we move off AI, IBM's HR chief talked about common mistakes companies make implementing AI. What were the big no-nos?
Yeah, that was interesting. Key takeaways were, don't just try to replace workers. Focus on helping them, augmenting their skills, and reskilling. Don't treat ethics and governance as an afterthought. Build it in from the start. Don't make things more complicated for employees. AI should simplify stuff. Don't just chase the latest AI trend. Solve actual business problems. And a big one, don't automate broken processes. Fix the process first, then think about AI. It's really about a smart, human-centered way to adopt AI. Okay, so connecting these big bets in AI and quantum back to the messy reality of corporate IT. That brings us to IBM's absolute core strategy today, hybrid cloud. And that's really powered by Red Hat.
Right. So hybrid cloud isn't just another offering. It's like the strategic center for IBM now.
That's exactly how Krishna talks about it. Hybrid cloud and AI are the twin pillars. It's all about letting companies manage their complex IT environments, their own data centers, private clouds, multiple public clouds like AWS, Azure, Google, managing all that as if it were one single coherent system.
And Red Hat OpenShift is the magic ingredient for that consistency.
Pretty much, yeah. OpenShift is their big enterprise Kubernetes platform. It lets companies build containerized apps once and then run them consistently wherever they want. AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, IBM Cloud, their own servers. That portability, that consistency, it's gold for companies trying to avoid getting locked into one vendor and just manage the sheer complexity of it all.
And it handles more than just containers, right?
Yeah, they have things like OpenShift virtualization, so you can run traditional virtual machines alongside containers, and OpenShift AI specifically for those AI workloads we talked about.
What about Ansible? Where does that fit?
Ansible is the automation piece. It provides the tools to automate IT tasks across that whole hybrid infrastructure, setting things up, configuring them, managing them. They're even plugging watsonx code assistant into it now to help people write the automation scripts, the playbooks.
And they just made that massive HashiCorp acquisition. That fits right in here, too.
Oh, absolutely. That $6.4 billion deal for HashiCorp was super strategic. HashiCorp's tools, especially Terraform for infrastructure as code and Vault for managing secrets like passwords and keys, these are basically industry standards for managing modern, complex infrastructure, especially across multiple clouds.
So IBM wants to own those standard tools.
Exactly. Bringing them into the fold lets IBM offer a more complete package for managing the entire lifecycle of infrastructure and security in these hybrid multi-cloud environments. The goal is to make it simply for clients, improve governance, and tame that complexity.
How does this hybrid approach actually look for a big client? Any examples?
Their deal with Deutsche Bank is a good illustration. Deutsche Bank gets broad access to IBM's software automation, hybrid cloud stuff, watsonx, even storage tools. It's not about just picking one cloud provider. It's about modernizing and optimizing their whole setup, using IBM's tools and know-how across their existing systems and potentially multiple public clouds.
What about IBM's old strengths, like the mainframe business, transaction processing? Is that still relevant in this hybrid cloud world?
You bet it is. It might seem like old tech, but mainframes still process a huge chunk of the world's critical transactions, especially in banking and finance. IBM's strategy isn't to replace them, but to integrate them. Make mainframe data accessible to modern apps, maybe running on OpenShift or even platforms like Salesforce. They're trying to bridge that gap.
So given they don't have the sheer scale of AWS or Google in public cloud, how does IBM really differentiate itself? What's their unique selling point?
Yeah. They're not trying to win the pure public cloud infrastructure race. Their differentiation is really about, 1, hybrid and multi-cloud complexity. They're the experts in managing IT across different environments, including the legacy stuff companies still have. 2, their deep enterprise and industry knowledge, especially in regulated fields where they get the specific challenges. 3, their commitment to openness, largely thanks to Red Hat and Qiskit, which appeals to clients worried about getting locked in. 4, their comprehensive portfolio hardware, software, consulting, all under one roof. And 5, a heavy focus on security and governance across that whole complicated landscape.
And they do partner with the big cloud providers too, right? Like AWS.
They do. It's part of being realistic about multi-cloud. Clients use AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, so IBM makes its software available on those platforms. They collaborate on things like AWS Elevate Days. It's about meeting clients where they are, enabling choice.
And this hybrid foundation is also essential for that boom in AI apps you mentioned.
Definitely. That billion-plus new AI apps by 2028, they won't all run in the same place. You need a platform like OpenShift and integration tools to build, deploy, and manage them effectively across all these different environments where data and users live.
Any key hardware partnerships besides mainframes?
Yeah, they're collaborating with folks like AMD, for instance, bringing AMD's Instant GPUs into IBM Cloud. That provides powerful, scalable hardware needed for demanding AI training and inference and other hybrid cloud workloads.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit and look at the money side. How is all this strategy actually showing up in their financial performance?
Well, the big story right now financially is definitely the software segment. In the first quarter of 2025, that was the clear growth driver. Up 7% year over year, hit $6.3 billion. This is really where you see the hybrid cloud and AI strategy paying off, especially with Red Hat's contribution, and that generative AI business hitting a $6 billion annual run rate.
So the shift to software, it seems to be working, financially speaking.
It's certainly the main engine for revenue growth and profit right now. Software is now nearly 45% of their total revenue, which is way up from a few years back. And these are generally high-margin businesses, too.
But it's not all smooth sailing. Other parts are struggling.
Yeah, there are definitely challenges. Consulting was actually down 2% in Q1, and new signings were down over 10%. That looks like it's feeling the effects of the broader economy, maybe companies pulling back a bit on big projects. And infrastructure revenue was down 6%, but that's mostly about the mainframe cycle.
Right, the mainframe cycle. Explain that again.
It's pretty predictable. Sales of the current mainframe model, the Z16, slow down as it gets later in its life. Then, when the next generation launches, the Z17 was just announced for June 2025. You typically see a big spike in sales as companies upgrade. So the expectation is that infrastructure revenue will get a boost starting later this year from that Z17 refresh.
And mainframes are still important despite everything.
Oh, yeah. Still critical for processing huge volumes of transactions, especially in banking, insurance, airlines. It's a sticky business.
IBM's always had this reputation as a solid dividend stock, a dividend powerhouse. How's that looking?
Still looking very strong. They generated $2 billion in free cash flow just in Q1, and they stuck to their full-year forecast of $13.5 billion. And they just raised their quarterly dividend again to $1.68 a share. That makes it 30 years in a row of dividend increases.
30 years. Is that dividend safe, sustainable, based on the cash they're generating?
It's like it. Based on that $13.5 billion free cash flow forecast for this year, the payout ratio, the percentage of cash flow going to dividends, is expected to be around 47%. That's generally considered pretty comfortable, leaves plenty of room.
Okay, let's talk about the stock itself. There seem to be mixed views on whether it's cheap or expensive right now.
Yeah, you hear both sides pretty clearly. The argument for it being potentially undervalued often points to that solid dividend yield, around 2.8%, and a forward price-to-free cash flow multiple that looks reasonable, maybe around 16.5. Some analysts have even recently suggested IBM might be a better bet than peers like Accenture based on recent stock performance and how earnings estimates are changing.
But what are the worries? Why might it be considered overvalued?
The main concern usually revolves around the price-to-earnings ratio, the PE. While the forward PE, based on expected future earnings, is in the low 20s, the trailing PE, based on the last 12 months, has been much higher recently, around 45. That's significantly higher than IBM's historical average.
So the worry is the price already reflects a lot of optimism.
Exactly. It raises questions about whether that valuation can hold up unless they deliver really strong, consistent growth across the board, not just in software.
And those big acquisitions, Red Hat, HashiCorp, they must affect these numbers too.
Oh, definitely. Red Hat cost $34 billion, HashiCorp $6.4 billion. They add significant revenue and capabilities, yes, but they also add a lot of debt and goodwill to the balance sheet. Critics sometimes argue this is buying growth instead of generating it organically, and there's always risk in integrating big acquisitions smoothly.
Despite those concerns, the stock itself has had a really strong run recently.
It really has. Up something like 50–60% over the past year, hit record highs not too long ago. Seems like investors have bought into the turnaround story, liked the earnings reports, and especially got excited about how quickly that generative AI business seems to be ramping up.
So the market is giving them credit for the transformation, at least for now.
It looks that way, yeah. Though, not everyone's convinced. There was that prominent short seller, Jim Chanos, who apparently called IBM an AI loser.
Ouch. AI loser. What's the thinking behind a comment like that?
Well, we don't have his full argument from the sources, but usually that kind of critique questions how real or sustainable the AI progress is. Is it truly innovative, or is it more clever marketing, rebranding old tech, or just growth through acquisitions like SeekAI? It's basically challenging whether IBM can truly compete head-to-head with the AI giants in the long run, a direct jab at their whole AI narrative.
How does their consulting arm compare performance-wise to a pure consulting firm like Accenture?
Lately, IBM Consulting has shown more volatility, faced more headwinds than Accenture, which has generally had more consistent growth, though Accenture has its own pressures too. But the argument for IBM is that they can potentially offer more by integrating consulting with their software, hardware, AI, and hybrid cloud capabilities. It's a potentially more end-to-end transformation pitch for clients.
Okay, so summing up the financials. Clear strength in software driven by the strategy, but pressures in consulting and infrastructure, a strong dividend supported by cash flow, and a stock price that's surged but faces questions about valuation and reliance on acquisitions. A mixed bag, really.
Right. So looking forward, Krishna's vision for IBM really stays focused on those three pillars: hybrid cloud, AI, and quantum, all aimed at solving complex, real-world business problems.
And the key strengths going forward seem pretty clear. That growing software business is the engine. They generate a ton of cash. The strategy seems focused. They have deep roots in major industries, and they're even leveraging legacy strengths like the mainframe.
Absolutely. But the challenges are significant, too. Executing that super ambitious quantum roadmap is a huge one. Integrating HashiCorp and Software AG smoothly, battling intense competition in AI, getting consulting and infrastructure back to consistent growth, and just navigating the uncertain global economy. Lots to juggle.
So for you, the listener, wanting to track this, what are the specific things to watch? The key milestones, the HETOs?
Okay, on quantum, definitely watch those intermediate steps. Does Loon in 2025 work as planned for error correction? Does Kookaburra in 26 prove modularity? Can Cockatoo in 27 actually link them? These are the crucial technical hurdles before Starling in 29 and Blue Jay in 33 even become possibilities. And keep an eye out for more real-world use cases beyond just early simulations.
And on the financial and operational side?
You want to see sustained growth in software and that generative AI number continuing to climb. Signs of life returning to concept, consulting better signings, revenue growth. Watch how long the positive impact from the Z17 mainframe cycle lasts, starting later this year. Look for evidence that the HashiCorp and Software AG integrations are going well and delivering the promised benefits. And of course, that free cash flow needs to stay strong to support the dividend story.
What about market adoption and just how people perceive IBM?
Yeah, is watsonx really getting broad adoption across enterprises? Are those watsonx AI labs actually producing significant, scalable solutions with clients? And does the overall market view of IBM continue to shift? Are people starting to see them more as a modern innovator in AI and cloud, or still primarily as a legacy tech giant? That perception matters.
So quite a journey we've taken through IBM's complex world. From the frankly mind-bending ambition of quantum computing with Starling and Blue Jay, down to the practical realities of enterprise AI with watsonx, all sitting on that crucial hybrid cloud foundation from Red Hat.
It really is a story of contrast, isn't it? Leveraging deep historical strengths, those client relationships, industry knowledge, even the mainframes, while making these huge, arguably risky bets on what's next, trying to lead the charge in solving really tough business problems.
Definitely. And maybe just one final thought to leave you mulling over. Think about that dual role IBM's playing in quantum. On one hand, they're building these incredibly powerful machines that could theoretically break much of today's encryption, the stuff securing everything online.
Right, the potential threat.
But at the same time, IBM is also a leader in developing quantum-safe encryption methods. They're building the defenses needed against the very future threat their other work might create. They're sort of building the lock and the key simultaneously. It really captures the complex, cutting-edge space they're operating in.